So, as Melissa mentioned, I wear a few hats. Today, I'm here as the co-founder and CEO of Earth Allies Restoration Network, or EARN. We are a nonprofit organization based out of the US, but we work globally. We really have deep roots in East Africa, and we're currently working on expanding to West Africa and Central America soon. You can read, next slide. You can read our vision and mission here if you'd like, but we are essentially a capacity building organization for those who want to learn and implement restoration agriculture. EARN was founded on the belief and the observation that it is possible to grow food in harmony with nature rather than against it, and that by doing so, we can improve livelihoods, restore the environment, and build climate resilience. So yes, you can go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about our history and not too much, but I think it helps to ground us kind of in development and how this kind of happened organically. But in 2011, I went to Tanzania to an organization called Mainsprings to conduct an evaluation for them. And we learned that a large percentage of the organization's budget was going towards fuel to get food, despite having a farm. We realized in that moment that we needed to implement a more sustainable form of agriculture, but we really didn't know what that looked like. I went back to the United States and I attended one of Mark Shepard's workshops. Mark Shepard is pretty well known in the restoration agriculture field. He has a few books and documentaries, and I fell in love with his methodologies. And after the workshop, he agreed to come back to Tanzania with me. So this began a 14-year journey partnering with Mainsprings to help them transform their campus into what is now a diversified food forest. So on the top left is pretty stark contrast between, on the left, a monocrop corn field, and on the right, a somewhat developed alley cropping system, and which used to look like the field on the left. And there, the picture below is an alley view of that same system. And then some of the other pictures are part of our network. So other organizations began to see, what Mainsprings is doing and wanting to learn. So in 2020, we launched a pilot program, which has since grown into what EARN is today, which is a network of organizations practicing learning agroecology, and then working to spread those practices throughout their communities. Next slide, please. So we've based our approach on 20 years of working in farming communities, and I wanted to share some guiding lessons that we've learned along the way, which really kind of line up with our programming. But first, we found that we could have the greatest impact by working at the organizational level, and this is because local organizations tend to have a broad reach within their communities, but I think more importantly, they've built trust in their own communities. They understand the local context and culture, the environment, the biomes better than anyone else. And we all know the history of foreigners coming in, telling people what to do has really not worked out well for local communities historically. So almost all of the organizations we work with are founded by or run by people from the community in which they work. We learned that four things really that organizations and individuals benefit from when they're looking to change their farming practices. One is access to high quality ecology-based education. There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of pressure to rely on expensive inputs and focus on yield no matter what the cost is to the soil or to human health. So we offer an alternative education rooted in ecological science. It's about observing how nature works and growing food in harmony with those laws of nature. It's not just about specific practices or cookie cutter solutions, but we like to focus on the critical thinking and the observation. In this group, we've talked a lot about understanding and honoring Indigenous practices. And to me, this type of agriculture reflects the root of Indigenous practice, which is grounded in observation and a deep respect for nature. And ultimately, it's the realization that as humans, we are part of nature. rather than in control of it. And I think it's a mindset shift in how we interact with the world around us. You know, I've had participants come up to me and say during the course, hey, this is how my grandparents used to grow food. And I always love hearing that because it's a reminder that this is not new, it's not shiny. In some ways, it's bringing back how many cultures used to procure food. So while we do draw on a core curriculum based in ecological science, we also facilitate classroom discussions that draw on the knowledge and the local practices of whoever's in the room. And in this way, I think we're bridging science and tradition in a very unique way. However, I will say that I feel we can always grow in this area, and this is one of the main things that's attracted me to this group in particular. So I really look forward to continue learning from you all and the speakers that we've had, because to me, this is just such a crucial aspect of the work that we do. So the other lesson we learned is that people, especially adults and especially farmers who rely on subsistence agriculture for their livelihoods, really need to see it to believe it. So we focus on helping organizations create demonstration farms where people can hear and smell and feel and taste the difference between a diverse perennial-based system and a conventional monocropping system. Demonstration sites also help to mitigate the risk to individual farmers, really providing a space for them to learn and practice and choose which practices are right for their personal farm. We also learned, no surprise here, but upstart capital is pretty helpful, especially when it comes to transitioning to improve water management practices or starting to integrate perennial-based trees and crops that might take a few more years to yield than an annual crop. So we offer organizations small grants for up to 5 years to help them maintain demonstration plots and start to build their capacity to train others. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, we've learned that access to a community of practice to learn and share ideas, successes, and challenges with are really important. And to us, the opportunity to collaborate with each other is a major benefit of being part of a network where organizations can come together and learn from each other. So we have monthly virtual bermside chats for all of our partners. There's a plethora of WhatsApp groups, cross-site visits, networking opportunities, shared resources, and ongoing technical assistance. So that last column there is, it's more just programmatic. We are, really trying to work globally. Our long-term goal is to establish learning centers and other regional hubs with locally grown expert trainers so that they too can teach and support others, organizations and farmers, kind of a hub and spoke model. I'd like to pause here because in our year together with this group, we've talked a lot about building trust and the importance of community-driven work that respects cultural norms and indigenous practices. And I'd like to just reflect for a minute what it's been like for me to build trust in a place where I am not from. It's been and continues to be, and I will have more slides this year just after this note, but it continues to be a deeply transformative learning experience for me. And I just wanted to share some of the reflections I've had in that journey. But first and foremost, I think building trust takes time. And I think it takes connecting on a human level. So realizing that despite our differences, we have this core shared human experience. We have relationships and work and kids and love and anger and disappointment. And rather than judging those differences as right or wrong, we can really come together around the similarities while also respecting how other people live and relate to each other in the world. So I think in some ways it's a mindset shift away from basic human instinct to identify and maybe fear differences, but instead focus on that shared experience. And I think this is developed by spending time with people. And I think probably most importantly for me, it's listening more than talking, learning and sharing slowly to build those relationships that aren't just purely transactional, but again, connecting on that human level. And the last thing I'd say is, for me, recognizing any power dynamics that might exist and acting accordingly, because I think there can be very subtle, it can be very subtle, but they can have huge impact. So it's really important to be self-aware and understand how you're viewed within the context of a different culture. What are the expectations or assumptions being made? So I just wanted to touch on that because we've heard a lot from people who are working in the communities they're from, but I work in a lot of communities that I'm not from, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. Okay, back to some pictures, and then I just wanted to, um, what are we actually talking about in terms of the agriculture we practice? You can go to the next slide. Many people will use terms to describe what they do, and I just say, hey, just show me a photo of your farm, because you've probably noticed I've used terms agroecology, regenerative agriculture, permaculture, restoration agriculture, somewhat interchangeably, despite their nuanced differences. But what we're essentially teaching is nature-based agriculture that focuses on meeting people's needs, food, medicine, shelter, while also restoring or maintaining ecosystem health. So we're focusing on agroforestry and water management, but really developing systems that consider ethical decision-making and three tenets: care of people, care of earth, and future care as its core principles. So here on the slides, this is Kitambo, Tanzania. This is Mainspring's first campus. On the left, there's 2012. And on the right is the same plot. 7 years later, you can kind of see that red building there in the background. But this is an example of an alley cropping system where you have 5 to 20 food producing or timber producing perennials. And then in the alleys, we usually put your annual crops. This particular picture doesn't have any of those. So next slide. This is an example of Kahunda, Tanzania, which is Mainspring's second campus. And I'm just highlighting here the use of berms and swales on contour to catch water and sink it in to the ground rather than letting it run off and take the nutrients with. That building on the top there's a gentle slope down to the lake. But that big building there is a chicken coop because we want those nutrients to be at the highest point of a gravity-fed system and percolate through the system. And then along the berms and swales are perennial-based trees, and in the alleys are annual crops. This is 1 year later, both in August. Granted, I don't know what the rainfall is like that year, but I will say that many of our partners will tell us their neighbors peek over the fence and think they're doing magic because they're the only green plot during the dry season, just because of some of these gentle changes in the landscape. And next slide, this is the last one. This is just another example. This is one of our longstanding partners in Loliondo, Tanzania, which is just bordering Kenya on the north side of Tanzania, outside of the park. This is, I think, a really interesting example because this is a Maasai group. They work with Maasai children. And as many of you might know, they're traditionally nomadic pastoralists, but have been forced for political and different reasons to change their way of living, to be more agricultural based. And they reached out to us because they want to do it in a sustainable way. So, I mean, I was actually at this first site visit, and just to see this transformation in 3 years is pretty amazing to me. And I could go on, but I would just, we've seen incredible change at the partner level. We've seen springs restored, soil health improved, food sovereignty improved, nutrition, yields, and I think one of the more important ones is resilience to climate change. So we're hoping to scale this work and believe we have a good model to start from. But if you'd like to learn more or would engage with our network, please send me an email. I always love to find ways to partner with others, whether you know of grassroots organizations or individuals that could benefit directly from our programming, or if you know people who'd like to support this work, we're always happy to connect. So thank you again for having me.